You might want to pay attention. We live in a cartoon, but at any rate.
This video is for the folks in the US, as you might not get to see this in a few days' time. My name is Clara, and I am a particle physicist working at CERN. And between the 21st and the 25th of January, there is going to be a beautiful display of the planets all lining up in the night sky. And I just really want to pass the message on that CERN, with the Large Hadron Collider that was used to discover the Higgs boson, we are off right now. We are not running. So anybody who might have gotten slightly over enthusiastic when the solar eclipse happened in North America, the Large Hadron Collider is not running. We are off. Anything that you think happens is nothing to do with us. Okay, thanks.
And snakes do come from eggs. And what is Apophis? What is Apep? Apophis is the snake. It is the main demon snake. The individual in this video said that these things are summoned over here. It's all mental, which is very interesting because, again, Aleister Crowley, when he summoned over Lamb told him to watch for the egg. Maybe Apophis is not a giant asteroid, maybe it holds a demon. And while that might sound funny, here's a couple of very interesting things about Apophis. The number for Apophis is 99942, as above, so below, 66642. The number 42 is very important in the Kabbalah. Matter of fact, I do believe the number 42 is the most important number in the Kabbalah. The number 42 is the number with which God created the universe according to the Kabbalah. So there you have it. Six even state how Apophis will be in the shape of an egg. Reading this article from WTSP, which is one of many articles talking about Apophis being in the shape of an egg, it says that it is also likely egg-shaped and taller than the Empire State Building. If Apophis did hit the Earth, it would cause widespread destruction up to a couple of hundred of miles from its impact sites. The Earth, it would cause widespread destruction up to a couple of hundred of miles from its impact sites. And remember, Apophis is supposed to either hit or miss Earth on Friday the 13th, which is a date that's constantly pounded into our brains by big media, Hollywood, and so forth, as
not look like an egg with a serpent wrapping around it. You remember that video that I just made? Very odd, right? It's obviously something super spooky.
Neither by heaven, for it is God's throne.
Oops. Too far back.
And the center section makes the 33rd. There's a lot of people on that same page. Now you're going to start seeing that 33 show up everywhere, like in the buttons on his cloak. They represent the years of Jesus' life. The 33rd degree is where Jesus transfigured in front of the disciples. The 33rd degree is where the Masons built the Tower of Babel out of bricks. And yes, if you work with bricks or stones, you are considered a Mason. Charleston, South Carolina, home of the Masons. I love that these guys think that they are the oldest fraternity of men. You're not the oldest fraternity of men that swore an oath. That was the fallen angels. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. That book is in the Library of Congress. And this book is right on my shelf for all of us to read. And in the Sermon on the Mount, these are Jesus' words right here. Verse 33, in case you weren't paying attention. Again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, Thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. The men of old time are spoken of right here in Genesis chapter 6 under the wickedness of the world. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Jesus goes on in the book of Matthew and says, But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is words in red. Right there. Did we really pay $50 billion for a pyramid on the other side of the world? We sure did. But we also bought this big replica of the sun, and like the Tower of Babel, that was a building right up there. And that big building of the sun, that's right there. We can go right inside of it. It looks like there's a steering wheel in it and all. You touch that little button right there. And I tell you, when you drive it like with one hand, take that steering wheel Wait, I don't know. We gotta look at the map. Whoa, over there. There's a map of the world. That's like a seal in clay. That's just like the book of Job right there. And we'll zoom out. You can look at it. It looks just like a clay seal. And it's like half flat, half round. That's next on the trumpet. We paid $50 billion for the city of Satan. I took you inside that pyramid just the other day. There's the temple I took you inside of. And those are the two pillars of Freemasonry right there. Twist those letters around. That place is real.
Yeah, it is.
No, really. If you back out of the sun and you go right down the little place where I guess you could drive it to, you can go down to this big thing right here. It's like a museum or something. What does it say?
What's it called?
Back out of that. It's like big as the earth. And then this thing going around it. We're just going to right inside this thing. It's like some kind of crazy light show.
Wow.
$50 billion? Yes, it has the Tower of Babel. Slide this thing around. It is turned as clay to the seal.
I'm gonna pause it just a second.
It stands as a garment. Job chapter 38, 14. I think that's Florida. There's that verse in the book of Job right there. It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment.
Few years, get to see the grand climax of life ever. Pretty cool, right?
The asteroid Apophis is biblical wormwood. And if NASA's original date is correct, Friday the 13th, April 2029, when it's going to have its near miss. Oops, it didn't miss. Now what do? If that actually happens, and if it is wormwood from Revelation chapter 8, then that would be considered the middle of the Great Tribulation period according to dispensationalist theology. So I was explaining that, therefore some people might take NASA's date for 2029 back up 3.5 years to try to find the beginning of that dreaded 7-year Great Tribulation period, which would land in the year 2025. Well, as I'm saying that, Derek's sitting over there, he's got an iPad. I don't even know what he's doing, but he has opened up a Hebrew calendar, and his eyes gets real big, and he briefly says this, that if you take the date, Friday the 13th, April 2029, back up 3.5 years earlier to the day, you land in the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles, which has been connected by many scholars, people like Donna Howell, to the second coming of Jesus Christ. We started finding one element after another, that 3.5 years earlier than the arrival of Apophis, there's the Feast of Tabernacles. We also note the Feast of Trumpets. We also note the Feast of Pentecost, all of which are connected 3.5 years before the arrival of Apophis by Bible prophecy scholars as connected to the second coming of Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
Is how much money we spent building a pyramid and a city on the other side of the planet. It's called Astana, Kazakhstan. And the pyramid that we built is in the middle of
Some
it.
of the stuff
right
is
in the
amazing.
heart of the city. It houses 200 delegates. And ironically,
Frightening even.
there are 200 fallen angels. But if you click inside that building, you can go to the boardroom, which has a round table where all 200 delegates get to meet. And if you disagree with them, there's a hole right there in the middle of the table, and you can see all the way down to the floor of reconciliation. And I guess that's the hole of peace. And that's next on the trumpet. The United States were some of the first people to even invest their money there. This is just one of many buildings they built. Circular 200-seat chamber for world religion meetings. Chapter 3 of the Book of Enoch, Fallen Angels, tells you all about the 200 angels that descended onto Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is where that happened. And if you go to the Book of Enoch, you can see that those 20 names that it mentioned right underneath that verse, they were leaders of tens. So there were 200 people that descended right here on top of Mount Hermon. And the United Nations decided this is right where we need to build a base on the 33rd degree parallel.
33, what? 33, 20, 33, 35. Okay,
These people right here, and he will gather the nations. And no, I'm not talking about the Pope. Look at that logo right there. That's quite simply the 33rd degree. That logo shows the Earth divided by 8 sections, and each section is divided by 4 other sections.
Council of 8.
Times 4 is 32, and the center section makes the 33rd. There's a lot of people on that same page. Now you're going to start seeing that 33 show up everywhere, like in the buttons on his cloak. They represent the years of Jesus' life. The 33rd degree is where Jesus transfigured in front of the disciples. The 33rd degree is where the Masons built the Tower of Babel out of bricks. And yes, if you work with bricks or stones, you are considered a Mason. Charleston, South Carolina, home of the Masons. I love it.
Los Angeles, California, Maui, Hawaii, Santiago, Chile, Valencia, Spain, and Catania, Italy have in common? Last year it was announced that all of them would be smart cities, much like the city of Los Angeles. And coincidentally, each one of those cities experienced a devastating fire that destroyed millions and possibly billions of dollars. It's crazy that now smart cities are having a reputation of catching fire. And that should also beg the question, what other cities around where we live and around where you live are scheduled to be part of smart city movement? And just in case you're curious, some of these are major cities like San Jose, California, Cary, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, Austin, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm not saying that any of this is going to happen in those cities. This is simply for informational purposes only, and I'm just trying to make people
news that's going to kick off your weekend. There has been a new archaeological find that really throws a spanner in the works for the history of humankind. Near this beautiful 700-foot waterfall in Zambia in Africa, archaeologists have found the remains of a 500,000-year-old man-made wooden structure. Man-made, 500,000 years ago, made of wood. Previously, early humans have been found to have used wood, but in things sort of like tools and sticks and making fire, not building buildings. Also, at 500,000 years old, we're talking pre-human humans, because the oldest human skeleton that we found is 300,000 years old. So either pre-humans were building buildings, or humans go back more than 300,000 years. It makes us question just how nomadic were early humans if they're building permanent structures.
All right. The 24 Olympics ceremonies, closing ceremonies, Notre Dame rituals. You're going to see why all of that came to pass. Okay, so here we go. This is going to be a long video. First of all, The president moves the inauguration indoors
Richie from Boston,
because
guys.
of the freezing temperatures. Well, here's a funny thing. The inaugurations are always held in January, and the temperatures weren't capital. But here's a funny thing most people
Kind
don't
of
know.
egg-shaped.
The United States Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, is spelled with an O. O, not an A. Every state has it, not an A. Every state
Back it up.
in there because he is going to be the last president of the United States. Now, many people are familiar with the Capitol, right? The Capitol. But here's a funny thing most people don't know. The United States Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, is spelled with an O. O, not an A. Every state has its capital, and every capital is spelled with an A. Spelling it with an O is an homage. What is that an homage to, Richie? I'm glad you asked. Let me show you. It's an homage to the Temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus in Rome. That would be them, right there. The six-sided stars that are in the skies, that are fixed in the firmament, that show up in their location every night is exactly as prescribed by God. That's what those are. I just noticed it. That's them, right there. That is them, right there. Without a doubt. Because they're all six-sided. Exactly. Okay, cool. That is them right there. Without a doubt. Because they're all six-sided on the inside. That is exactly. Okay, cool. I had to point it out. It is what it is.
As depicting George Washington becoming one of the gods, even if only playfully or metaphorically so. And, that said, I want to make a comment here about Freemasons. Now, as a disclaimer, I do not intend this reference in any sort of dark or conspiratorial way. I only bring them up because they no doubt played a role in the commissioning of this painting, and it's my understanding that Freemasons have historically been adamant about ultimately insisting on monotheism, which is to say, insisting that there is ultimately only one God. Now, that in itself could provide us with grounds for arguing that the various depictions of gods and goddesses here are mere metaphors. But another point of insight might be found in a sort of pantheist interpretation of painting. So on this view, the various gods would be aspects or emanations or manifestations of the one God. Perhaps that's a possible interpretation. And with that in mind, it's worth noting a part of the painting which we have not yet looked at, which is a banner above Washington with the famous slogan or motto, E pluribus unum, which means from many one. E pluribus unum. Now,
absentee, vote on election day. I don't care how, but you have to get out and vote. And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You gotta get out and vote.
Because when he's inaugurated, the Bible's right there. But Trump's hand is not. Trump's hand, he took the oath of the United States of America with all these people. Trump was a president. He knows he has to keep his hand on the Bible. And he specifically doesn't do it. The judge doesn't tell him to do a do-over. None of the spectators tell him to do a do-over. Nobody. His wife, dressed like The Undertaker from WWE, is literally holding the Bibles, and Trump does not place his hand on the Bible.
As of now,
this guy's the president,